Last Sunday, a bunch of blokes got their moobs out in central London to protest against the Supreme Court ruling
that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
They think that getting their wank baps out somehow proves that they are women too.
Well, I'm a woman, and I thought I'd show the Prime Minister my boobs.
But all it proved is how deluded and aggressive some men are.
So let's talk. Let's get from talking now. Let's do some speaking.
And why they absolutely should be kept out of women-only spaces.
Be afraid of us. Make no mistake. Okay, our tolerance is running out. We will never submit to fascism.
They were met by 5 young students who were keen to show that young people too reject this nonsense. And I'm very happy to have had a chance to chat with Maeve, who was one of them. Before we get into it, please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment. If you don't know what to say, just say, "Put your moobs away, fellas!" If you want to support my channel, you can do so monthly via Patreon, or send me a tip via PayPal, or on here via Super Thanks. Okay, let's go meet Maeve. Hi Maeve, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm well, thank you. Yes, I'm good.
Right, you've had a rather busy weekend.
I did have quite a busy weekend, yeah, but it was enjoyable. I mean, as we were just talking about before the recording, I was doing some turfing, and yeah, it was good. Across the board, I guess my aim with most of the things that I was getting up to was to get we'll shed some light, let's say, on the fact that young people, especially young women, are willing to, I suppose, rebel against the gender ideology and against what we perceive to be a real encroachment on especially women's rights, as I say.
Yes, and you've just finished uni. So just out of uni, and it's like straight out the gate, you've sort of jumped into the deep end of, what would you call it, campaigning, activism?
I suppose campaigning is one thing. I suppose there's an element of activism, although that we're kind of only just starting off with that kind of thing. There's other stuff that we want to do. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the reason that as soon as I literally finished my exams, and it's the first time I ever posted a tweet was a month ago when I finished my exams and basically was done and dusted with university, because I couldn't openly and easily voice these views while still a full-on student at the university with, a year or a couple more years to go. Because, okay, I do admit that the tide has turned somewhat more recently. And obviously now post-Supreme Court ruling and various other, legal kind of waymarkers, it is a protective view to hold to be, quote, gender critical. But it's just the case that if I'd been more open about this earlier on in my university career, instead of waiting, as I did, it would have really come back to bite me for multiple reasons. In that, one, the university, sort of the authorities in the uni could have really taken issue with it, and I could have risked my, future at the uni. But point two is the one that it's the risk of social ostracization and just abuse from people in the student community, from my peers. I suppose that risk was really, really high. So I sort of had a conversation with myself, and I was like, it's in no one's best interest for me to get kicked out of uni, except people who push this ideology and want it to be really dispersed. So I made a conscious choice to not put anything online, for example, because I didn't want to have to deal with the irritating but powerful backlash that the university could have prevented.
And it was a couple of years ago that Raquel Rosario Sanchez,
yeah, absolutely,
at your uni, you saw what happened to her.
She was just before I arrived at the uni, but I found out all about it and was so incensed by it. Basically, just to sort of confirm what happened, it was that the the society Women Talk Back, they were trying to hold an event that was, a lot of their events were mixed sex, and they would advertise them, you know, say men and women can come along, or, you know, whatever you identify as, you can come anyway. But they decided or needed to have an event that was single sex, that was women only, because the nature of the event was such that they were discussing basically like the fallout and the kind of the traumas associated with sexual harassment, assault and rape. So it's obviously the case that this was a space where women needed to be able to speak freely and in an environment where they felt safe and were surrounded by members of their own sex who could empathize. But this was clearly, like, it's so ridiculous to kind of over justify it. They wanted to have a women's event. Yeah. That's fine. And even if they wanted to talk about, I don't know, Disney films, that's fine. But this was
or whatever,
because it was about sexual assault. And then anyway, so they tried to exclude trans women. Basically, they said, if you're a man, you can't come. Obviously, loads of people got really, really angry. Raquel was removed from her position, and she was banned from holding student leadership roles for, I think, 2 years. And then the whole committee had to do, you know, your kind of EDI crash course thing.
Yeah.
So it's horrific to say this, but I genuinely think we're at this point, it was a textbook case of gross injustice just poured onto women by the trans kind of foot soldiers who were just push this ideology, always at the expense of women, of course, also at the expense of gay and lesbian people, and more, you know, increasingly at the expense of children. But regardless, though, this was, I mean, absolutely just enforcement of an ideology, quite literally enforcement.
But now you're out of uni, and it's, as I said earlier, it's like straight out the gate. Maybe you were like, it's like you couldn't wait to just
I couldn't.
I
was so frustrated at university. I had a lovely time in many ways, and I really enjoyed most of my course. I obviously have met some amazing people, and all in all, I've loved being a student. But yeah, as soon as I finished that final exam, I sort of, you know, I've done some like reflection in the immediate couple of days afterwards. I reflected quite a lot, and I just thought it's such a shame that there are things kind of, well, I said it on the telly, I described it as being drip fed or potentially more aggressively enforced. And it's true. I think it's the combination of many methods of enforcement of a certain belief set. It's small things sort of dotted around. Yes. But then every so often it's like you're forcibly told what you sort of should be thinking, or the opposite, you're told to stop saying what you're saying. And like debate is really, really quashed. So the atmosphere was strange like that.
You, on Sunday, you went to what did Joe Bartosz call it?
Oh, the Mad Move protest.
The Mad Move protest. The Mental Move March. Right. So where did the idea come from? I mean, you must have seen, okay, these men want to go and get their moves out in public. Where did the idea come from, oh, let's do something? Because the events that I've been at over the last, 5 years, it's always been women's events where they protest the women. Yeah. But this was kind of flipping the script.
Yeah, it was flipping the script, which I think, funnily enough, I think that flipping of the script is reflective of the fact that, you know, to use another phrase, the tide is somewhat turning surrounding this issue more generally. I think that obviously, yes, we've had these big legal landmarks in the form of, or even, legal, but also they've obviously been big events regarding the kind of pushback against the pernicious nature of gender ideology and especially its impact on children and women. So obviously sort of the investigation into JIDS, closure of Tavistock, CAS review, and then you had individuals cases like I'd argue most famously Maya Forstater and similar ones. And then now the absolute kind of mothership in the form of the Supreme Court ruling.
When that judgments came through, where were you and what was your reaction?
I was at university. I'd yet to finish. So this was April the 16th, and my final exams were at the start of this month in May. And I woke up, literally, I was like, I know that it's happening. I need to instantly, what's the time? Have I missed it? And it was about 20, luckily it was about 20 minutes before the ruling, which was what, it was 9:45 or something, wasn't it? And then I just waited, and I was frantically like reading all the updates of what had happened in the courtroom thus far. I had about 50 tabs open, just reading what all the news sources were saying about it, taking note of which ones weren't reporting on it at all. And then I listened to the video, the live stream as he read out the ruling. And as soon as he said, I can't remember the exact wording, like, it will refer to biological women, I shouted, yes! And like hugged. And my flatmate came up to my bedroom door and she was like, what's going on? Like, you okay? And I was like, yes, everything is great. And then, and she was like, okay, bye, And as soon as it happened, I was in touch with my friends that I've met at various, political talks and events, and who are aligned with me on this issue. It was mad. I messaged my mum, like, I messaged everybody, just when I was flooded with messages myself of people being like, have you seen, like, isn't it great?
Yeah.
And I had this
that's
really
so good.
Yeah. I had this strange
It's so
feeling
important to have that, to be able to share that with others.
that kind of network. You're right, especially at somewhere like the university that I was at, which it's an isolating view to hold, and you hold it in isolation for that reason. And this leads us on actually to why I was keen to counter protest the other day.
Yeah.
So, myself and it's now about 50 other predominantly young women, but also some young men, most of whom are gay. We have a group chat basically, which is students from all different universities across the UK, including Scotland, and Wales. And it's basically people that all hold so-called gender critical beliefs and or have suffered at university for that reason. Or, that's not like a criterion. You don't have to have, been embroiled in some kind of row at university but for a lot of people, it's basically one of those things where, yes, because we all hold gender critical beliefs, that's the kind of, you need to tick that box. So yes, we're all in this group chat, and on that we share, stories, just resources, people sometimes just sort of like vent. We have some really, really great discussions on there. And it's also just really important for some people to basically have that space, virtual though it may be, to basically remind themselves that the whole world isn't insane. It's just some people, because universities are so captured and they're such bubbles, a lot of them, and they become these horrible echo chambers where you're constantly being put upon by this rubbish. And then so people can't escape it because it's in their lecturers parrot it, in their social circles it's rife, online it's everywhere. So it offers a bit of like solace, I suppose, this group. Anyway, in fact, it was a friend of mine, he saw that the topless protest being publicized on Blue Sky, and almost as a joke was like, we were kind of, laughing like, they're doing it again, because there was a recent topless protest outside Scottish Parliament because they're
one in Leeds outside a gallery somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of happening. This is the trend, is to go and get your synthetic estrogen induced moves out.
I thought I'd show the Prime Minister my boobs, and I thought I'd let the TERFs see that my hormones are working great.
Yeah, because moves is woman.
I know, because that really makes me trust and believe them, doesn't it? But so what happened with the protest is it was shared on Blue Sky by an organisation called Strive, which standing for trans rights, inclusion, visibility everywhere. But yeah, so we saw this, quite funny sort of poster for advertising what they were going to do and the date and the time. And they picked, Sunday the 25th, and it was like, meeting at Marble Arch. We're gonna sort of hang around there for a bit and then march to Downing Street, and peacefully, they kept stressing how peaceful it was going to be. Well, peaceful protest there. So in this group chat, I said, I'm going to that, because I want to see what these people, what they say. I'm genuinely interested to hear what they say. but more importantly, too many times now I've seen men taking their shirts off and exposing their chests, and we're all disgusted and we all hate it. Not because, I'm sort of squeamish about the human body. No, it's because I know the reason they're doing it is what disgusts me. The gross misogyny on display is horrific. They're also, they're woefully misinformed on what they're supposedly trying to resist. Da 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 da. And I was like, this is now, like, the times now. I've hated this pernicious ideology for years, like literally coming up to 10 years of my life. And I'm done. Like, why? I've had to really, really self-censor at university. And I was like, I've done all of this learning. I back myself to win in an argument against any of these people. I was like, why? What am I doing? Like, I can just go. Like, I'm not spoiling for a fight at all. But I don't want these people to think that everyone agrees with them. I think there's more than enough narcissism that's already pre-existing in their circles. So I'll just go and show them that that's not the case, because I know that other people weren't necessarily going to do it. We all just sort of had that same thought process, basically, quite a few of us.
So it was more to show visually a counterpoint
Yeah,
than to actually engage, I guess.
Exactly. So personally, I've obviously finished university, so I don't have that kind of on the line anymore. But yeah, for some people, they do have more on the line in that they're a tiny bit younger, so they're still in, their first, second years of university. The social ostracization risk is huge, and for some people, I'll admit, like, that doesn't necessarily scare me, whereas I think for other people that's something that would destabilize them a lot more, and I understand that and empathize. So I knew that, if everybody went with my mindset, maybe we would have kind of engaged a lot. But I also didn't think that was necessary. And based on the other kind of criteria that people had, we were just like, actually, it's a far more powerful thing to do is just stand there about 20 meters from where they're doing all their speeches. This is outside Downing Street. We had some really big red banners that actually...
Those banners were beautiful.
So I did not make them. So where at Bristol, in Bristol, and so it covers Bristol and Somerset, is a group, an amazing group of women called the Women of Wessex. And they're sort of like, their activities a bit like the Women's Rights Network. They basically meet, discuss, they do campaigning. They're very organised, just an amazing all-female group. And a woman within that group made those banners. And when I told some of the women that I was going to go to this counter protest, they very kindly lent them to me to use with my friends. So That's what we did. And so, yeah, because we had those banners, especially, our presence was known and what we believed was clear. Some people came over so we get kind of into it now. Some people came over to engage with us, which I put footage of on X because I was wearing this is the point. We were aware, Connie and I were both recognised at certain points, and we were aware that I should explain, there was a police presence as well, which is a big part of why the 6 of us or 5 of us who went were happy to be there, because the police were very clearly aware of the fact that TRAs have a tendency towards sort of aggression, partly because this issue is very close to their hearts because it's so personal. So of course, people get upset and tempers run high. Also, a protest atmosphere, stuff can just happen. People can get angry. So anyway, police were there. They weren't forming like a line between us and them, but there were lots of police officers, and they were stood kind of at either end of the line of people that I stood in with the other 5 of us holding banners. And they came up Whitehall, and we'd met them at Marble Arch and just kind of milled about and basically had a rough idea of numbers, that kind of thing. And we actually walked on that march briefly.
But they didn't know who you were at the time.
No, they didn't. So we kind of we sort of looked fairly down and like didn't make a spectacle of ourselves. And we sort of blended in because at the end of the day, we were just young people wandering along in a crowd of, predominantly young people. And yeah, so I was recording all of this. But then, we peeled off from the march and took the tube to Westminster, and then sort of basically waited for them. Spoke to the police, told them what we were going to do. They were more than fine with it. They were really supportive, actually. And then we kind of, saw them, this huge crowd of people come around the corner, flags, banners, shouting and screaming. Sarah Jane Baker, Alan Baker, as he was born, just absolutely going off on one.
First, we'll take away women's rights, just as they tried to erase trans women's rights. These turfs are basically tosspots.
Calling Kelly J. Keane and J.K. Rowling Nazis, calling us fascists, bigots, transphobes. Yes, and then they're coming towards us, and we got the banners, stood in a line. I could feel Connie and I were not especially nervous, I think, because both of us are just quite angry by this point. But some of the other people we were with, like, I really, really respect what they did, because it was really brave. Like, the way that I knew they felt a higher level of anxiousness about what we were doing, and honestly, rightly so. And that they have more on the line, given that they're still in institutions and stuff. And they did it because they just believe in what we're saying, and they believe in the risks posed by the opposite side. And I was quite moved, actually, by the way that, my friends were able to put aside, like, their concern for themselves. So yeah, it was really powerful. It made me feel good. And I just wanted to stand there and be like, truth will out, biology is a thing. And more specifically, the kind of visuals of it, young people will not continue to be your foot soldiers in this. You can't continually make cannon fodder of us. Like, we're not all going to comply. We're just not. And many of us don't want to. And basically, we were trying to set something of an example to show other people that, it's okay to be young and go against this.
I think that's a really powerful message, or visually. I guess as a group, we always get told that we're too old and out of touch. And, like David Lemmy called women standing and fighting for women's rights dinosaurs, and saying they were hoarding rights, which again, lots of women took on as a funny thing, and started running around as dinosaurs with eggs, every egg representing a right. And that's one of the things that I just absolutely love about this movement, if you like. And also at all these different events that I've been at, the creativity of the banners and the artistry of the banners. And if you compare that with them having a cardboard sign that says "Decapitate TERFs," it's like there's a real stark difference. So you're there, and then they're coming towards you, and you've got Sarah Jane with his lovely lady voice going, "Fascist Nazis." It's like, it doesn't matter if he's topless or not. It's like, it's so clear that he's a bloke. This is a very dangerous man. He's been in prison for over 30 years.
When we were at Marble Arch before, so they started at Marble Arch, marched to Downing Street, stood outside Downing Street. That was their whole stay. When we were at Marble Arch, Connie and I arrived, and we sort of wandered over. We already were wearing body cams, and I could see we stood kind of to the side. There weren't that many people as yet. There was still like maybe 100 people at that point, all spread out. Mm-hmm. But he was making a speech. And I remember looking at him and being like, okay, obviously just like creep, TRA, fine, thought basically nothing of it. And then I like looked and I was like, isn't that guy who I literally couldn't even bring his name to mind. But I was like, oh my God, he was in prison. Like, that's the guy. I've seen him. I remember the campaign to free him and the kind of semi-iconic red beret. And I remember that absolute horror story that he harps on about all the time, because he thinks he's the ultimate in making a martyr of himself, because he cut off his own testicles in prison. Definitely. And then the story goes that he ate them, which he said that, but I'm not sure if that's true. But anyway, he's making
he's himself has put out different versions of that story, and he does that on purpose because he likes to keep us guessing, and he wants us to talk about him. So he himself has put out different versions of that on purpose. He does that sort of cheeky, affable character thing.
Yeah, you're right. He really plays in. ironically, it's incredibly male, to this whole kind of Jack the lad, like cheeky chappy kind of persona, and he really goes to town with it, and it just screams bloke. Like he's a man so clearly. And also, I remember when the campaign to free him was huge and it was all over everywhere, and my friends were reposting it, and I remember being like, you absolute lunatics, you're reposting this man who, by the way, is really bad looking and like doesn't pass at all, and also just is an odd looking guy.
I'm a woman.
And my mates were people I knew were reposting kind of this picture of him looking all kind of, you know, challenging in the red beret and being like, so awful, like free her and all of this stuff. I was like, that's a violent individual who's self-mutilated for attention. Like,
supposedly ate his testicles and also tried to kill someone while he was in prison.
Well, I know. And he escaped prison and was like at large for, I believe it was 100 days, definitely about 3 months, before he was reapprehended. And, you know, this guy's a menace. Like, he's a proper dangerous person. What really frightened me, I guess, is that I look at that man and I see a criminal, I see a predator, I see a narcissist, I see a danger and a threat. And that's bad enough, him just standing there. And then he walks along through the centre of the capital city with hundreds and hundreds of people quite literally following him.
Like the Pied
When he said things, he'd say, like, he was rambling. He just did this like insane, like long rambling speech the whole time when we were marching along. Well, I was just walking along, me and my pals. We were just at the back, you know, just getting a lay of the land. And also, you know, I could tell that some of my friends were more nervous and stuff. And it's good to kind of just be amongst the other people and just be like, this is not, they're not scary, you know. Anyway, but he was at the front with his bloody dog, with his jacket open, so his moobs out. And then he's saying this rambling speech, repeating himself. Every so often he'd just be like, trans women are women. And everyone would be like, yeah. But I could sense there was confusion. Like, some of the young people walking along, at one point, I couldn't help myself. I was wearing a body camera as well. But I was like, so what do you think of her? You know, use the pronoun. And this girl goes like, oh, I don't really know. Like, clearly didn't know anything about who he is, what he's done. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, I think his name, you know, I was like, I think it's Sarah Jane Baker. Maybe just like look her up. Because I know full well, doesn't matter how much they glorify this person, you go on even just bloody Wikipedia and it's right there in black and white. Like, but he was going this rambling thing. He was sort of like, where streeting needs to be, he's a fucking cunt, like sorry for swearing, like all of this stuff. And then he's like, the future is trans. Then he's like, I think Wes Streeting's secretly trans. Like, just this idiotic spiel. So he was doing that. Anyway, then we peel off, got on the tube, went to Westminster, sort of like beat them there, so to just be there. And then we were there sort of waiting briefly, and then they come around the corner, and annoyingly body cam footage, the sort of perspective makes everything look a bit different because it's basically like a constant wide angle.
Yeah, it's like a fisheye, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. But the way that it felt and the way it looked, seeing that crowd of, the flags in the baby blue and baby pink and the shouting, and I remember looking around, and it took me a long time to spot a woman. A long time. Bar the woman who's clearly, you know, she's
had a mastectomy,
yeah, and these scars. It was a really sad sight. But yeah, this like I saw very few cisgender women.
Yeah, her being there and also being topless. It's like they were making as much as generally they always argue that there's no such thing as biological sex or just sex. At the same time, you have those blokes, they take their tops off and they're saying, look, breasts, I can't possibly be a man. Whereas the woman goes, look, no breast, therefore I'm not a woman. How did it feel so obviously they're coming towards you. You were there for like an hour and a half, you said. That moment they took their tops off, did it feel like because you know what's driving it, that for a lot of them, there's something very sinister and pervy behind it. Does it feel kind of grotesque when you're there face to face with them? Or does it feel intimidating or threatening? Or does it feel kind of hilarious? Or all at the same time? Are you like, is this really happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit surreal. I think what's funny is when you spend a lot of time as a young person looking into this issue a lot and informing yourself on it a lot, you become sort of accustomed to the insane, which is funny. Like, it becomes almost habitual. You just see, like, I used to balk at the kind of the horrific things you people would say and do. Like, I used to be really freaked out by the way that they looked and that kind of thing. And now I know that I've become, like, I don't need to kind of, that's not my instinct anymore. Now I'm just like, right, that's a guy, I kind of know all of this stuff. I'm like, trans-identified male, he would have taken estrogen, probably judging by the like new weight distribution in his face, I would put him at about, he's probably been taking it for about a year. Like, all of these things I can kind of look at this person now and understand.
Forensic.
Even if they say, like, if they from a state in America, I'll be like, okay, there's this clinic is famously in that state, or like I know there's this surgeon that does this surgery there. Like, I sort of, it's not that I'm obsessed with the issue at all. To be honest, it's a very small portion of my life. But whenever I've looked into it, I'm very thorough. Like, I kind of basically have like documents where I've just kept information, because basically the main reason I started doing that was because I was concerned that if something happened and someone tried to like really muck up my life, especially at university, I'd need to just, I don't know stuff. Basically, I was like, knowledge is power here, especially when you're flying in the face of an ideology that denies, truth as a valuable thing. So basically, yeah, I used to be far more kind of sensitive to the horrible way that these people look and act often. And I've become desensitized. But in that moment, I think because there were obviously so many, and because I know what I know about Sarah Jane Baker, and because I heard, like, I'm female and I'm young and everything, and I know how it feels to see a group of men coming towards you. Like, I know what I do, which is I avoid it, or I cross the road, or, I'm instantly looking to think how much time I'd have to run away. Do you know what I mean? And this, my brain can't hide from itself. Like, when I looked at that group of people, I felt exactly the same way. I was looking at a group of men who were shouting and who looked scary and who I know pose a threat to me. Like, all my kind of survival instincts were kicking in, and I was like, I suddenly, my two friends either side of me, there were 5 of us in total, but the 2 girls either side of me, Connie and Lottie, I was instantly thinking, if we have to run away, like, how, basically what am I going to need to do to like look after these people? Like, where should we go if whatever happens? And I was just thinking, like, yeah, I knew what I was looking at. I was looking at a group of men, but somehow worse than just like a group of guys, because this is a group of guys who are convinced that what they want and their fetish is more important than my, like, the truth of what it is to be female.
And your rights, they are there to take your rights.
Yeah,
even
so
though
I
the
mean,
Supreme
they
Court
have
has
this
just
line.
said you can't.
They have this line, which is, everyone can have rights. There's enough rights for everyone. When Connie and I were in Leeds, this absolute idiot, like genuinely unintelligent, trans-identified guy kept saying that. He's like, there's enough rights. You don't need to share rights out. There's enough for everyone. And I was like, but there aren't, are there? Because if you come in my single-sex space, it's not a single-sex space. So you've nicked my right.
It's
Like,
that
it's as simple as
simple.
that,
And the point that you made before we started recording was just they always go on about, they're trying to erase our existence. But then you said just the 5 of you existing in that space outside Downing Street with the banners was enough.
The facade is just that. It's a facade, and it's really, really fragile. And I think so we were trying to do a few things, and luckily, I believe we're successful in doing them, which is 1, represent the fact that people dissent, 2, represent the fact that specifically young people dissent, 3, throw them a bit and not intimidate. God, we were never going to intimidate them. They're the scary ones. But remind them that no, we don't take this lying down. And also sort of symbolize the fact that we're willing to meet them where they are. You know, we're not going to kind of stay in, you know, online forums and in, you know, clandestine meetings made up of women who've been fired. You know, like we exist and we're out there to show them that their ideology, they can parade and cavort as much as they want, but they're like children stamping their feet. They're not going to get their way.
And there's a big contrast between the way that they show up at women's events and the way that the 5 of you showed up at their event. Like
when they come to a women's event, you're right. When they come to a women's event, the order of the day is intimidation, shouting,
noise,
active disruption. Whereas what we decided to do quite consciously, I shouted a couple of things, like from where we were sitting. Like at one point, I couldn't deal with it. Some idiot was making a speech, and I just shouted, "You're a man." But yeah, so we knew that luckily we didn't have to do any shouting or be amplified or have any chants. Just standing there, just like literally just being there with a banner that says something as simple as sex, not gender. More than enough. Again, we're not trying to be inflammatory. We're trying to be representative and symbolic of something that's important and that they conveniently push away and they don't want to see, which is the fact that they are and will continue to be disagreed with. And it's not, this is the thing, we wanted to be there to represent that, yes, they'll be disagreed with and people will act on that disagreement. They won't take their crap lying down. I'm not going to do it. I will not. I'm done with being in single sex spaces and there's a man there. I'm not happy about it. It's happened to me loads and loads of times, and every single time recently I've challenged the person, and always his first instinct, like across the board, is to be all like sad and sort of like, oh, pity me, like I'm just trying to we in peace. And then immediately I watch it in his eyes, something always changes and suddenly he's angry. And it's pathetic, but it's like I'm scared, you know?
Right. And Alan Baker, I mean, he came out quite aggressive, as per usual. And he said, here's a message to the world, pin back your ears, be afraid.
He said, and you'll reap what you sow.
You will reap what you sow, and you risk encouraging and reaping the result that you seem eager to provoke. We will never submit to fascism.
And he basically implied that TERFs, as he calls them, were and are provoking a reaction. He was being very kind of cryptic and sinister, but he doesn't have.
Because now he knows he could get recalled to prison again.
He could get recalled, and he knows that he was charged with incitement to violence. Anyway, and he was saying you're gonna get a reaction that you don't like, a reaction you seem to really want, basically implying that he's gonna get violent. I was like,
yeah, and you're asking for it, which is the usual abuser kind of spiel.
Exactly, like it's disgusting. Yeah, he was gross. There was some other. I mean, you've seen the pictures, I presume, of the topless.
One of them looked like an extra from Dawn of the Dead. Like he went to the Tate Gallery the next day. Yeah, and had the same look on his face, like this.
He was walking along at the start, and my friend literally, like, she leaned over to me and she was like, "He literally looks like a corpse." I was like, "I
know." So, and then you're face to face with these blokes, and they've got their tops off. So
we were stood off like to one side. We were on a traffic island in the middle of Whitehall, because that was me being like, let's go and stand in the road. Like they need to be able to see us. There's no point standing to one side. This is symbolic. Like we don't need to be there long. Like we can move. And I kind of was like, let's go. And that's what we did. And they stood, most of them on purpose, like keeping their backs turned and sort of ignoring us. And if they referenced us in their speeches, they had a microphone and an amplifier. If they referenced us in their speeches, it was like the fascist scum over there, all of this. We had another friend who was in the protest, kind of like keeping tabs and telling us about his whereabouts. And like, we were organized and everything. And yeah, so she was just kind of like writing stuff down that was said, kind of keeping tabs on things, talking to people every so often to kind of see the lay of the land and check people's sort of the collective mood. And every so often people would come up to us. This guy came up to us. It's on my ex, there's footage of this stuff because everything was filmed. A guy came up
the
to
guy
us.
with the long hair. And
Oh, such an idiot. And he took a photo of each of us, and I was literally like, I don't care. Like, I'm here. Obviously, I'm fine with you having my photo, whatever. You're not going to do anything with it. Honestly, just the most pathetic attempt at intimidation I've ever seen. And then I shouted, like,
Take the mask off, you worse!
and then he like did that back at me. But the way that he walked, he was this like creepy little incel autistic bloke. He was kind of like, actually, do you know what biology even is? And I was kind of like, you're such a loser guy, kind of like lives with his mum, kind of idiot person. And
but this is where you get those same old arguments, because he was trying to play that whole intersex differences of sex development card.
I was having none of it. I was literally like,
you were really, that was one thing where he plays that card and you just went,
do you think that the men in dresses over there have that?
I've got that mixed up.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
That was a great
clap. I was done. I'm done with these people. Like, I literally think they're less clever in many cases. So I have no respect for their intelligence because they prove time and time again it's lacking. I don't assume they're less intelligent. They show me repeatedly in the way that they speak and the beliefs that they hold. But funnily enough, I respect their right to hold them. You can hold whatever belief you want to hold. At the end of the day, I can't control your thoughts, and the world would be a scary place if I could or tried to. The thing that angers me is that they think that their belief is the best one, and that means that it should directly encroach on the rights of women. And I'm like, no. And also the rights of, do you know what? Rights of everyone to associate in single-sex groups, and that obviously is especially pertinent for gay and lesbian people. They also think that their belief encroaches on the right of a child to grow up safely and healthily and bear children themselves.
And go through puberty. Yeah.
It boggles the mind. So this idiot was talking to me quite frequently, and I was just like, no, I was engaging, don't get me wrong, but it's so easy to sort of win these things with these people. You just ask them to define a term and they're instantly screwed. So that was fine. Various other people came over at various stages. Some people sort of were like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you so mean? And that made me laugh. A lot of this stuff, to be fair, I laugh quite a lot, like generally in my life, like I laugh frequently. But these people, I'm now at the point where, sure, at times I've been scared of individuals, and that will be the case forever because they're men, and there have been times when I've been scared of men, and that's part of life. But it's now at the point where majority of the time, if I'm engaging with these people, like, I will laugh. I'll openly laugh in their face. Like, I think what they're saying is often objectively funny because it's so insane. The one thing I forgot to say is when they were coming down Whitehall and there were people there like taking photos and stuff, like press people, whatever. As soon as those people saw us, they flocked over to where we were. There was like so many people with cameras in front of us. And it was so funny. I remember all these people in front of us taking our photo, like, and over their heads, I could see the approaching crowd of trans activists. And it was so funny. I was kind of like they weren't the story, Our presence was the story in many ways. And Pink News, who've written about the protests and our counter protests, have, they gave it half a sentence. They were like, there were some gender critical activists there. First of all, they got the number wrong. They were like, there were about 7 of them, and just said, they just tried to be really dismissive. And I'm like, you should engage with the fact that we were there because we were, and, for a significant chunk of the time.
Yeah, and one of them was a gay man or a young gay guy that was on your side. But obviously they're always going to be biased. But I think it's interesting that, the story wasn't necessarily them. Even so, with all the exposure that they get, even from the media that's biased towards them, as in promoting them, do you think this shows them off in a good light? Like, you've got this...
People's perceptions are really skewed, aren't they? Because you'll see, a picture of Sarah Jane Baker with his moobs out. This is a convicted torturer who's literally walking around telling women to be afraid. But these people, they'll see a picture and they'll be like, "Oh, this is great," and they'll say it's super empowering and everything. But
Right.
fundamentally, like, the mask is slipping.
Well, this is operation.
Why
that
they
fake,
push the
isn't it?
dolls to the front? So outside Scottish Parliament, these, you've got dolls and you've got bricks, obviously, and dolls. None of them are especially.
They had one doll.
And they put him right to the front because they were like, "Oh God, we know that we're all pretty funny looking and not passing, so let's put them kind of."
Also, there was one moment where there was a bloke with the long white skirt.
Yeah, and a denim jacket. Yeah.
And at this point, he had the jacket off. He was just standing there topless, and he had quite a booming man's voice.
Yeah,
and
a man.
He was talking.
The one thing I want to do, because it is the anniversary of Alice's death.
And he was talking about a young guy who ended his life. And his mum,
Lindsay. No, Lily. What was her name? Alice something.
Yeah. So, and his mum particularly has become this real gung-ho trans activist. So they were going to have a minute silence. So as the one bloke goes,
so we're going to have a minute silence for all those lost.
One of the guys at the back, also topless, starts going, rah, 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 rah.
Suicides are still being caused by the oppression of this country.
Okay, we'll have a minute suicide, quietness, and then we'll dignified, and then we're going to do it.
And I'm like, he's,
I know. I've seen the clip.
Be quiet. Like,
I know.
Come on.
They can't even respect their own. They can't even respect their own sort of laws,
That
can
was
they?
hilarious.
It's totally mad. Yeah.
You did your thing for about an hour and a half, and then when they finished it, they just sort of, walk away, or did they try
an hour,
to
maybe
you and surround you? Or?
Maybe an hour. I kind of lose track because we were there for a long period of time, but they were there while we were there for a bit less time. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't tell you specifically, but like a significant chunk of time.
But were you able to leave sort of safely, or did they?
Yeah, we could leave safely. It was fine, and we, the police, as I say, they knew what we were doing. We were filmed. Did some interviews and stuff. We were very, we did what we went to do, and then we left and went to the pub and had a bit of a debrief, and that was good. And then we went to. No, that's a lie. We didn't go to the pub. We went straight to Let Women Speak.
Yeah.
In Hyde Park.
And then you spoke there.
I did do that, yes. And then,
and that was.
And then we went to the pub, and then Connie and I went on GB News, and then
GB News, yes. Sorry.
Yeah, and it was good. Yeah, I had a busy day.
That was a full-on day. That was a proper day of turfery.
But I enjoyed it, but more importantly, I believe in it. I believe in what I'm doing, and I believe in its importance. And in part, I believe in the fact that there's other stuff that we need to get on with as a society, and we need to do. And this stuff is so regressive, and it's boring. Like, there's other stuff we need to do. I don't have any interest in talking about this to my hypothetical children. Look, it's hard because there's a kind of people have fallen into the gap, so to speak, because there are people who've done it now, like they've transitioned now, they've taken drugs now, they've and certain things have been changed in law, or you can't undo some of the impact of this. You can't. But I think we should be doing far more to stop further impact. And it feels like we're not. Supreme Court, yes, is fine. The closure of gender identity clinics, which are cesspits and abuse children, fine. But there are other things, like I think that there should be. It's hard. I have a quiet confidence, but confidence nonetheless that, like, this has now been, the wind has been taken out of its sails to the extent that I think it will go back to just being a sort of rogue fringe social thing. But I also don't want to underestimate its power, so I'm a bit torn. But anyway, I think it will die down, and the trans mania will it will become a thing of the past. I couldn't say when, but it will. But that's going to hinge on people casually rejecting these people. Literally, it's a simple, just not giving them attention and not giving them what they want, you know? And the protest was a form of that. Events like Let Women Speak, where it's, does what it says on the tin, and it's literally, they just sort of almost casually exist now, and they're quiet and very defiant acts of.
Yeah. And the TRAs now, at least the London ones, they leave them alone. In other places, obviously, yes. I went to the Bristol one in 2022.
So did I. Went to the Bristol one this year, the one that's just been, and there were loads of TRAs.
2022 was crazy. It was my birthday that day, so I made cake. I made like lemon drizzle cake, and I was handing it out even to the TRAs, because why not? I had one nice chat with one of them, but then they surrounded us and we couldn't get away. And again, it's this whole idea of intimidating and threatening and trying to silence.
It's so pathetic. All that says is that their standpoint is weak. Like, if you have to enforce your view with violence and, force, how strong is the view? Like, come on.
Yeah, it's and again, it's like,
I don't need to touch anyone. I don't need to hurt anyone. I don't need to raise my voice. I can communicate the truth calmly, and it speaks for itself. Like,
and you didn't have to take your top off to prove that you're a woman.
At one point, to be fair, I said it as a joke, but at one point,
what you attempted.
No. Like, I said as a joke, I was like, what's funny is, like, they've probably never seen real boobs in real life. So I was like, this could be their time. Like, if one of them pushes me, I wouldn't do that, because I'm, look, I don't think female nudity should be sort of sensationalized, although that's obviously what happens a lot anyway. But, in that specific scenario, I'm not going to sink to their level, because, I mean, it's annoying. They've taken... they take everything. They usurp and steal and repurpose and deliteralize everything. Like, it's frustrating that. So yeah, if I had stood there and in defiance also taken off my shirt, like, it would have kind of. It wasn't this, like, suddenly that it's no longer my body. It would become this political statement, and I refuse to speak their language in that way. Like, they don't.
And then suddenly you're playing their game in a way.
Exactly, and it seems it. I'm not going to punish
people would then be comparing you with them and going, well, the bloke's got much, better knockers or whatever.
Exactly. And I'm not, you know what I mean? It's annoying, because they sort of, there's something in the fact that I no longer had the autonomy to make a choice, because they'd sort of, that would mean they win if I played their game. But and then it was a really good day. I think my main takeaway is that I believe that young people, I'm not trying to say that they need to step up. Like, at the end of the day, I know that it's really hard. I've said that. I said it on the telly, and I said it in many other ways I've written it. It's hard because it's a hot button issue. It involves, holding this view involves being told you're unkind, which is a very hard thing to frequently hear. It messes with your self-perception. If you are gay or lesbian, if you are gender critical, you really risk losing a lot of your mates, because a lot of people, the LGB with the T is like a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I get that young people have a tough job. Also, this issue, it's so murky and convoluted and complex, and every single person thinks that they're the most important trans person in the world. So I know that to kind of come into it now, it's tricky, and I get that dissuades some people from developing their viewpoint deeply. But I just encourage any young people to don't play their game. Like, you don't need it to be complex. Because you can always have the truth on your side. You can have the simple fact that, like, but that's a man. It's as simple as that. You don't need to know kind of. I know it's all kind of all legal and technical now, and I'm on board with that, and I know plenty about it. I've followed what's been going on with this for a long time. But anybody else who comes into this, you don't need to sort of revise. You don't need to know the dates of every ruling and every case that's happened to every woman. It's just truth is enough. Truth is enough. Coming out as a TERF or gender critical, I'd say is not much easier than it was 4 years ago, but it's getting there. And there are things, it depends on sort of where you are and who you're speaking to, but it's getting there. And I'm pleased about that. I can see, I mean, I know that the tide's turning and stuff is, it's now in law that we know that there was confusion and now there is clarity, and they're going to pretend that there isn't, and that it's only guidance and that it's not legal and all of this rubbish. There's clarity. They hate the result. Of course they were going to be honest, I'd have absolutely hated if it went the other way. So,
Yeah.
One side was always going to be really disappointed. As far as I'm concerned, truth will out. But I want more young people to do it. The more, the better, because we need to prove what is true, which is that this ideology it's possible to reject it, and that is that, and that's my basis for all of it.
That young people are visible doing that, it sends out a powerful message. So where can people find you? Obviously on X.
I am on X, which is just Maeve Halligan. I also have an Instagram where I post clips, etc., which is Maeve Halligan _. So yes, that's where I put stuff. I've been rubbish. I haven't actually put anything on my Substack, but I will do that. And I'm also hopefully doing some articles in the coming weeks about, quotes, turfing, and young people's role in it, which, as I say, is a really important one. So yeah, but most of the stuff, if I'm doing whatever I'm doing, I'll put it on X.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
And I look forward to see what you and the rest of the collective come up with next.
Definitely. I mean, the one thing I would say is regarding this group of gender critical students, I don't know regarding your following or viewership, like I don't know sort of what the demographics are, but young people, yeah, we're trying to collectivize and make sure that people have a support network, and we're unifying as the young ones in this discussion.
Yeah.
So if people
important.
get in touch with me, I can link us all, and and Connie, obviously, when we're linking people to one another as a support network, as well as a sort of platform for sharing of resources and information. We're gathering momentum now, especially because Connie and I have just finished university, so both of us are like locked in
on it,
at least for the next few months, because I guess the overarching point, Supreme Court protests ongoing, this is the time. Like, this is when we need to represent the dissenting view, which, by the way, is the majority view, no matter what they try to tell you. Like, it is. So
okay, I think that's a good note for us to finish on.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for watching. Ciao. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my PayPal and Patreon supporters. Because of you, I can make videos like this. Special shout out to my big spenders. Help Her Open, Mama Turv and the Turventines, Me Julie, The Lovely Mary, Julia, Dusty, Judels, Leffy, Dorothy, Wildfire, Esther, and Martha. Thank you.